Welcome back to the Afternoon Snack Podcast. I'm Meredith, here with Alex Parker. In today's episode, we are lovingly calling Assholes on the Internet. I don't know, we actually haven't discussed the title, but that's what I have the GarageBand file saved as, so hopefully you're okay with that.
Sure.
We're rolling with it. But first, we would like to thank you for listening. Usually we do that at the end, but we're going to do it at the beginning today. It means a lot, especially after last week's big gay episode, which, you know, we put a lot of effort and thought into. It really means a lot to hear from you guys on the podcast generally, but especially that topic because it feels so kind of raw to talk about sometimes. So thank you for everyone who reached out and shared it. It means a lot.
You're welcome.
Including you. Yeah. We've really been this has been a time of growth for us as both I think as people, but also as a brand. And as ridiculous as it sounds to attribute that to social media, the reality is a large part of our presence is social media, and it is this podcast, and it's the way that people see and hear us and what we say and what we put out. And we wrote a post on this on Saturday, kind of poking fun at some of Alex's bloopers from the week, but we've had to kind of lean into the video content a lot more than we used to. If you followed us on Instagram for a long time, you know we've done mostly written content, blogs and posts, and Instagram basically demands that we do reels now. So we've been exploring the video content, and it's been challenging and uncomfortable sometimes and annoying and time consuming. But it's been a fun challenge. And I think there's a lesson here, and there's a lot to learn and be gained when you, instead of running away and not doing the things that challenge you because, oh, well, it's not the way that we do content. You just figure it out. You figure out, okay, this is what we have to do to spread our message, which is ultimately the most important thing for us. And do it. Figure out how to do it. So Alex is finally on board, which helps a ton.
Yeah, I was definitely reluctant.
How come?
It was just something that's out of my comfort zone. It took me a while even to warm up to the podcast. And even still, I'm very critical of like what I sound like and what I say. But I think the positive feedback really helps, like, over time. Like, we've been doing this for about 2 years now, right?
Yeah.
And like each and every podcast gets a little bit easier. I try to listen to them back and figure out like what worked, what didn't, what I liked, what I didn't like for the most part. They never sound as bad as I think they sound right after we finish recording. But the videos especially, you're putting your face out there. Like the messaging, you can't hide behind written word. And writing is much easier, I think, for both of us. Like you can take the time you need to take, and you're not speaking, like literally speaking. It just doesn't seem as vulnerable. When you get in front of a camera and you talk, that's a little bit more like, this is me. And I think I started by, I don't know if you follow me, I did a lot of like cooking series when Meredith was gone, where I like talked into my camera, which I'd never really done before.
Those are very popular.
And that was kind of a way to kind of dip my toe into just putting my face and my voice out there into the world. And it just, the feedback really helps. Like people like it. People like seeing you. And then you think, well, I like seeing other people's faces. It's personal. And I think especially with COVID, social media is definitely a way to connect with people. And so the connection when you see someone's actual face and them actually talking and you see inside their life, you just feel that much more connected, which I think is important. And I think that's why our brand is kind of coming together a little bit more, because our personalities are shining through.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely, there's a vulnerability to it for sure. Because I think we're both fairly introverted people, and It helps to have like as much control over what comes out of my mouth as possible. And I'm sure you feel the same way. Like everything needs to be kind of rehearsed, and writing is the easiest way to do that, because you can review it. You can make sure that you include all the context and qualification that you need to. You don't stumble, you don't mumble, you don't miss words. You don't say things in a weird way. But with video, it's just kind of all out there. And yeah, I think there's a fine line between, I mean, we do all kinds. We do totally off the cuff, unscripted. We do very scripted, and it's been kind of fun to figure out what hits and what lands with people. I don't know. And it's like business is always a little slow in the summertime. So why not use that? Why not use this time to dabble and like literally learn? Like we're having to learn video editing. And by we, I mean me. I am having to learn video editing.
I try to have as few apps on my computer as possible.
Yeah. I have so many apps and so many videos. But we're having to learn that. You're having to get better with audio and captioning and just staying on brand while we do it. And I don't know, it's neat.
It's fun.
Yeah. I will say, and this will be a good segue into, I guess, the topic, which we'll get right into. The thing that the podcast almost feels protected, because it's not like unless you had an Instagram page where you're posting episodes, the episodes go up, people listen to them if they want to listen to them. And that's it. You're not subjected to feedback for each podcast, unless people reach out, which is great. We love when that happens. But like there's not as much banter. There's not as much back and forth. You don't have to field any negativity generally on the podcast.
Like if somebody doesn't want to listen to it, they just turn it off in their car. They're like, this sucks. I'm turning it off. Which, like, honestly, does that even happen with our podcast? Probably not. But if somebody didn't want to listen to it, it would be pretty easy to turn it off. But that's podcasts. Yeah. I've listened to a lot of podcasts where I'm like, this sucks. But I'm just going to go to another episode or another podcast.
Yeah. And you can just skip it. And you don't have to, there's nothing that necessitates you telling the podcast host, like, hey, by the way, this episode sucked. You just like listen, you're like, this one isn't for me, so I'm gonna skip it. And I'm sure we've had episodes
it's kind of like TV. It's like I don't know if it's because podcasts you're a little bit more removed from them.
Yeah.
Like you're listening, it's like not in real time. I don't know, it's weird. It's like when you watch a TV show or a movie, you're like, oh, that sucked. But you're not gonna like go on some sort of like, I don't know, maybe Reddit. I'm never on Reddit. So maybe you would go on Reddit and be like, this movie sucked. And then you would have banter there. But like, that's not, or maybe you would rate it on Rotten Tomatoes, but it's not as like there's no like attack. You don't get attacked as much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like protected for some reason.
Yeah. Whereas with, with social media, it's so easy to read a post or watch a video. And if you don't like it, it's so easy to be like, this is dumb in all caps. And instead of just moving on, or I disagree with this,
or unfollowing.
Yeah. Just like, what are you doing here?
Although most people who disagree tend to not be followers to begin with.
That's true. That's like the first thing that I check. I'm like, oh, yeah, you're new here. But it's funny. I'll tell one little story before we get into it. I'm reading another book on 2000s pop culture because I'm just like really into this topic now. We talked about the Jill Gutowitz book in the Big Gay episode, and I'm reading a similar book, different author, and she's talking about how, before social media and the like, she's talking about the 2000s, but clearly this applies to really any time before that. There was a big distinction between like celebrities and normal people. Like you would read about pop culture and celebrities in magazines or in newspapers, or you would see it on the news or on E or whatever, but you had there's no ability to interact with celebrities. You can't contact them and be like, hey, by the way, I hate you. It didn't exist. And now you have, like, celebrities are much more approachable, I guess, because they're on social media. And then you also have this entire group or collection or class of celebrity that was kind of born from social media. So the biggest, I guess, the example that she uses is Justin Bieber, who kind of sprung from, you know, the YouTube, Instagram kind of time frame. He was made famous by his followers, and even like the Jonas Brothers were made famous on MySpace by their followers. So you have this class of celebrity that just people feel more attached to these people. They feel some ownership over who they are and what they do, and I think that probably applies to CrossFit athletes, any athlete, but I mean, we deal most heavily in the CrossFit space. And, you know, we've talked about how CrossFit as a sport it did come up at the same time as social media. So a lot of CrossFit athletes garnered a big following during that time. So I think there is some ownership probably felt by the community and by people into at least the success as it's defined on the internet, like as an internet or Instagram celebrity kind of. There's some ownership there. But most importantly, there's a proximity, a very close proximity, especially to athletes who manage their own accounts. Like, you know, I don't think Justin Bieber manages his own Instagram account, but you and I do. Danny Spiegel does. Katrin, I don't know, maybe. But like for the most part, these people are on their accounts, on their phones. Like, you can talk to them or at them. Mm-hmm. So there's a definite proximity. So I guess that kind of just sets the stage for the conversation that we're gonna have. But I'll give some background and then let you go. Or do you want to give the background? I was just gonna say, if you follow us, or I guess more specifically Alex, you probably caught wind of some online drama a couple weeks ago, like over the weekend during semifinals. And if you want to understand more of the context, we actually did a podcast on the background last year after the CrossFit Games. It's episode number 37, and it's called like the CrossFit Games recap. And in that episode, we talk about the commentary from the CrossFit Games, which was extremely negative at times, and so much so that we watched a lot of the CrossFit Games last year on mute. And I know that other people did as well. And it was very frustrating to listen to then. And it seems like not much has changed, and it continues to be frustrating to listen to. Both it's annoying, but it's also frustrating as an athlete who can relate to the athletes that are competing to hear a commentator discuss their performance in such a negative light.
Yeah. So it's opinion. That was an opinion, but it was substantiated by actual evidence that we point out. Like the number of times like a negative comment was made during Mal O'Brien doing the thruster wall walk workout, which was one of the workouts with the most issues with the commentary. That was the one that stood out. So if you're ever interested in going back and watching.
Yeah, the spark notes on that one is I think there were over like 35 negative comments made during the final event.
Just like, I guess to be more specific, like a lot of like doubting, like, oh, she better slow down. She's not going to be able to maintain this pace. But like the funny thing is, in the end, she did.
And she crushed it.
And she ended up winning. And it was like, well, you know, she's beating Tia. She shouldn't be beating Tia. Like, I'm not quoting because it was a long time ago that I watched that specific event, but things like that.
Yeah. And then you compare that to the commentary on the final men's heat. And I think that there were 0 comments made that were negative. So just, it's like, go back and watch it if you want to understand what the context is. And then, basically watch almost any event from this year's Granite Games and you'll see.
I like almost didn't even want to do a podcast on this because it was a pretty difficult weekend for me. and I'll explain about it. I'll obviously get into the details. But at the same time, I do think it's an interesting topic, and I learned a lot. And so I'm going to explain what happened. And if you disagree, I'm like more than happy to talk. So 2 weekends ago, I believe, the Granite Games semifinals CrossFit event was on. And the commentators were it was like Joe something, not important. I don't even know who he is. And then Chase Ingram. And Chase Ingram was somebody that we had a negative opinion about at the CrossFit Games last year. So I went into the Granite Games not even knowing who the commentators are, because I honestly don't keep up that much anymore. It was clear to me that was Chase Ingram. He was introduced as a ex-CrossFit Games athlete. I think he went to the CrossFit Games in like 2008.
He was cut very early on.
Yeah, I mean, that's irrelevant. But throughout the weekend, I mean, it started out on Friday. It was, once again, extremely negative. And to the point where I found it pretty upsetting. Like, and there was a lot of like jokes made at the athletes' expenses. There were negative comments made about like, even to the, like, just inappropriate comments about the color of one athlete's kid's hair, like that he had really red hair, and they were kind of laughing about that. And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of funny, but at the same time, like, just don't. It's not appropriate. A lot of like the lifting one to me was especially bad. The handstand walk one where, he would say things like, just watch, like they're going to start dropping like flies. Like it was just, there's negative, and he would try to kind of make he would make like, it was almost like he was betting against the athletes. And then when he was right, like when the athletes failed, it like excited him. And that's the impression I got. And that's my opinion. I do not know Chase as a human being at all. I don't follow him on Instagram. I've never talked to him in person. I have no idea what his life is. I know that he in my opinion, did a bad job on the commentary. So I think it was Saturday morning or Friday night, one of the two. I posted on my social media as a story of me talking into my camera, and I said, does anybody know if there's a petition that I can sign to have Chase Ingram removed from CrossFit commentary? Like, this is bad. And kind of like, I kind of was joking, but not. Like, I kind of smirked at the end. And I think I was a little bit loaded from what had happened last year at the CrossFit Games. And to go back to that and touch on it, because there's some context there. After we talked about it on the podcast, a lot of people on our social media messaged us to say that they agreed and had an issue with the commentating, especially from certain commentators, Chase Ingram being one of them. So I feel like I had some backing, and then seeing it happen again, I was like, okay, I'm going to say something. Also, after the games last year, Chase Ingram, I don't even know how. I feel like I was aware that he was aware. I don't know if we had talked to people, but then he did a post that
I think he was receiving, and this had nothing to do with us.
I don't know how we found that out though.
I think someone who follows him sent it, like DM'd the post to us.
Basically, the post said, this is a hard job, but I care so much, and I'm doing the best I can, and I care so, like, it was very...
I think it was talking about how perfection is not attainable, but we should continue striving for it, which is like a very ironic stance to take, because I think if... Maybe we'll get into the receiving criticism later, but the whole sort of point of the post, it went to his character, which no one is speaking about his character, his experience as an athlete. Again, no one is speaking about his experience as an athlete. The fact that he's been in the community for X number of years, again, no one is speaking about that fact. It's all of these things that are actually quite irrelevant to doing the job that he has been like given. And he didn't speak to that except to say, like, basically, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, that was on the post last year.
Mm-hmm.
So then, so then fast forward, I don't know, 10 months, however long, 9 months. I do this story. I don't get a lot of DMs. Like, I do get responses to my stories, but never like an exorbitant amount that I can't even manage. I received, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of DMs from my followers being like, thank you for saying this. Like, seriously though, if there's a petition, I would sign it. This needs to change. This is really bad. Did you see what he said here? Like, basically, I had received hundreds of people saying that they agreed with me and thanking me for saying something. And I'm not exaggerating. One person commented back and said, "You're a loser." I think another person said, "Well, there are bad commentators in other sports." And I was like, okay, so that makes it all right then? Like, okay. So then, having had this positive feedback on my opinion, like, it just felt very validating and substantiated. I said to Meredith, like, maybe I should do a petition to like actually get this guy off. Like, he has been doing this, like, from my perspective, he was aware of it last year and he seems to have just doubled down. Maybe he wasn't aware. No one told me that he was aware, but that's the opinion I had. So I created a petition. It was very targeted towards Chase Ingram. I said, like, I think it was titled like, "Vote to have Chase Ingram removed from CrossFit commentary." One thing I do know about Chase is this isn't his full-time job. He is I'm pretty sure he's a contractor for CrossFit. He has his own gym. He has his own podcast. He does his own shit. Like, this is not how he makes money. This is not how he puts food on his family's table. I don't want his job. I had no personal interest in this except for the fact that, like, I feel like the athletes, and having been an athlete who has poured my heart and soul into this sport, seeing them continually being disrespected and undermined, and it made me sick, really, the comments that were coming out of this guy's mouth. So really, like, I just want to make this clear, like, it was never about me. Like, I really did not have much personal to gain here. I also don't have an Instagram that is about throwing like, I don't post about CrossFit Games on my Instagram. Like, my Instagram is personal. It's not a business. Like, I'm not an influencer. My Instagram now is just this independent thing where I share my life with people who want to see it. Like, I'm not like, I don't make money off of being extremist and have opinions about CrossFit. Mm-hmm. Like certain people out there who maybe have podcasts about CrossFit. Yeah. Like, we're not that company. I'm not that person.
Correct.
So then so I actually got a lot of signatures. Like, they were kind of trickling in, like hundreds. And then the next day, and then I started getting Andrew Hiller, who, if you don't know him, he is I don't even know what he is. A YouTuber?
Yeah, but like pretty new. Like, he's just started doing YouTube in
February. So basically his job, from my understanding, is to call out bad reps.
I wouldn't call it a job. That's what he started doing on.
So basically he shits on CrossFit. Mm-hmm. And like, at first it was great because, like, I feel that CrossFit, the sport, needs to be more fair. There are, like, standards aren't upheld a lot of the time. Like, judging is interesting. I think the nature of the sport brings an inherent amount of unfairness, but that's a conversation for a different day. So Andrew Hiller basically does these YouTube videos where he says, like, oh, CrossFit should have penalized Danny Spiegel because she didn't lock out this number of muscle ups. Here's the video. You can see it. And that's basically what he does. I've watched one of his videos. He apparently loves Chase Ingram and decided to, instead of, like, I don't know, whatever, I don't actually know what I was expecting him to do, he created his own petition in opposition to my petition. And I read his petition, and what I gathered from it was, number one, he believes Chase Ingram should not be fired. Number two, Chase Ingram is a very important part of the sport because he's been in it for so long. That was one of his arguments. Number three, commentating on the CrossFit Games is hard, so we should cut Chase some slack. And then that was kind of it. And to me, I'm like, okay, well, first of all, dude, you undermined your own argument. Like, you're basically saying, like, he is doing a shitty job. Let's cut him some slack because he's been in the community for so long.
Yeah, this is an interesting, I'll just, like, interject here. It was an interesting stance to take as, you know, Andrew Hiller, the guy who cuts no one any slack. Like, his whole thing is hold the line. Hold yourself to a high standard, which I tend to agree with. Like, we can get into his de-evolution, but you know, his whole thing starting out was, you know, let's try to hold CrossFit judging to a higher standard. It's what the athletes deserve. 100%. I agree with that. Mm-hmm. Interesting that would be his take on this, because I think that when you as a human being decide to hold yourself to a high standard, that doesn't just apply to athletics. It doesn't just apply to sports. That also applies to literally any other endeavor. So to say, oh, that, you know, commentating is hard, so we should cut him some slack. Well, like, dude, you can make the exact same argument for the sport of CrossFit. Well, CrossFit is a hard sport. We should cut these athletes some slack. They're at the end of the workout. They're almost locking their muscle ups out. Like, give them a break. They're trying really hard. They've been in the sport forever. They're good for publicity. That's such a ludicrous stance to take for him. And then the second thing that I have, this is becoming an annoying, this is not just Hiller, this is not just Chase, this is becoming an annoying trend in CrossFit. It's relatively new. It's this whole like, so-and-so is an OG. It's like this OG narrative, as if like being an early adopter of the sport like automatically makes you an expert. Like, it doesn't. Being an early adopter, like someone who is competitive, and like, I'm going to say this, and like, no offense if you were competing at this time, because good for you. Early adopters, early competitors, like, were competing in a sport that basically no one did. Like, you could be
It's a completely different sport now.
Like, you could be shitty. There was just no one else to compete against. So like, Chase Ingram, 2009, like, he was shitty. There was just no one else to compete against. Look back, look at any sport. Like, look at the NHL.
Look at Jason Khalipa. In those, I'm like, dude, you are moving like dog shit.
Like, Rich is the only OG who has continued to improve.
No, so is Annie Thorstadter.
And Annie. But like, look back at the NHL in the 1970s. Everyone was shitty. Like, you just get better. You can't say, oh, well, so-and-so played hockey in the 1970s. He's obviously an expert. Like, no, that is not a legitimate argument. An expert is an expert. Someone who relies on continued education and understanding of the athletes and the sport, and who, like, when they commentate, they don't just say, well, back in the day, we were doing snatches on dirt and rocks and it wasn't even flat. Like, cool, dude. Why does that come up every single time you say something? Every single event.
Yeah.
Anyways, that I just thought that was, like, for his purposes, for the argument that Andrew Hiller made, I thought that it was, A, the OG thing is completely irrelevant. We should just stop talking about that. And then B, like, you want to be flexible on standards when it suits your friend, but not when it suits Katrin or Danny or, I don't know, whoever else he does videos on. So it's just kind of, there's a bit of a tinge, a sprinkling of hypocrisy in that argument that he made.
He also made a great argument that it was great for me because it was hilarious. I really wanted to speak to all of his points publicly, but at that point in time, I was so over it. I was like, I deeply regret bringing this up because this is not the hill I want to die on. Like, it's CrossFit commentator. I care, but not to the point to like be starting this like huge internet argument. That wasn't what I wanted. I maybe didn't think it through appropriately. I didn't realize how divided people might be on this topic. I wish I had known. I think because I had so much positive feedback initially, I just went in kind of almost like blissfully ignorant to the fact that there was this whole other opposition. But that's beside the point. So he also said that people who've been in the sport should be commentating. And he used the example of Tom Brady recently signing some enormous deal to commentate for football when he retires. And I was like, so wait, you're comparing Tom Brady to Chase Ingram.
And also, he may have signed a contract, but you actually don't know if he's going to be any good at commentating. He might be terrible.
But his argument was like, it doesn't matter if you're like a really good athlete and you're a big part of the community and big part of the sport, that should be enough.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between Matt Fraser and Chase Ingram.
Exactly. Like, anyway. Okay, so I wanted to speak that. I didn't because I was done with it. But actually, I wasn't done with it because then Andrew Hiller had brought this to light, and all of his followers, who are not my followers, probably because we disagree on many different things that extend far beyond CrossFit, decided to descend upon my Instagram. Fine. But at that point, it was all only DMs. So I was getting I was getting DMs from people.
Yeah.
And the DMs weren't like, I think I got a couple, I'll give some credit, saying like, well, like, what specifically are you talking about? I actually think he's doing a good job. Can you point to some of the things he said that are bothersome? That sort of thing. So like I had some decent conversations. There was an athlete who basically was like, you're dumb. And I'm like, dude, I'm not dumb. Like, if you want to have an actual conversation, if you actually think he's doing a good job, please enlighten me. We had a conversation. Basically, he agreed that it could be better, but he thought Chase was doing a decent job. And it was like, okay, bye. But also then I realized that he's also in cahoots with like Savon and Hiller and those guys, and he's been on Savon's pod. So he's also in that like other end of the spectrum type deal, like with those people.
Internet extremists.
Yeah, like just, and people who are just kind of in this, like, it's so hard to describe, and I don't want to speak about other people really about this because it's not, I don't want to make it about specific people, but it is like, and I'll just speak briefly. Savon is a more, he has extreme opinions about CrossFit and beyond. He's very much like in the OG camp, like defending Dave Castro, fine and dandy, that's fine. But yeah, his followers are also a little bit on the more, and like, I don't mean extreme necessarily like in a bad way, but they're very, very much like,
they're loyal to the old way of doing things.
Exactly. And it like, again, I'm not going to speak to these points, but it extends beyond CrossFit.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with Savon. So instead of like being on his page and fighting every little battle, I just don't follow him. Plus he was shadow banned. So
he's very hard to find.
I think that kind of says something about the situation. Yeah. Anyway, Hiller's people started messaging me, and a lot of the comments were like, you're stupid. I can't believe, you don't even know Chase and you're trying to take food off his table for his family. Like, no one, not say no one, the vast majority of comments I was getting were not to the point. Like, I can't believe you would do this. This speaks to your character. It was just, there was nothing that spoke to the point. And that kind of bothered me because it was hard for me to speak back. I was like, okay, so I'm a shitty person. Thank you. I don't know. I've already laid out my argument in a couple different places here. There's not really much more I can do. So the next day, Sunday morning, I just was kind of tired of it. And I was tired of just getting like, you're a loser, you're dumb, you're a piece of shit comments. Because I was like, this just proves that I'm right in my mind. Yeah. It's like, you have no counter argument that you have to actually drop to the level of just calling me dumb. Like, what are you, 5?
Yes.
And so then I posted, I'm going to read it. It's a quote by Charles A. Anderson. Observe which side resorts to the most
I don't know the word, so you're going to have to
vociferous name calling. I actually never said that out loud. and you are likely to have identified the side with the weaker argument and they know it. So if your argument is to call someone a loser, then that's proof that you don't have an argument. It's weak and you know it. And so that's your only thing that you can say back. And I was like, this is perfect. This will send the message. And it said, after being called a loser a couple times yesterday, this quote made me feel better. These words also serve as advice for people who out there disagree with me. If you want to have a discussion, I'm all for it. If you want to call me a loser, go home. Originally, I felt really good about this post. I was getting like fire, clappy hands. Like a lot of the people who obviously agree with me were like, damn girl, loving this.
Yeah.
And then, unbeknownst to me, Sivan posted on his page.
Literal piece of shit.
Okay, Meredith posted on his page my post and basically said, I didn't even see it. I think you saw it.
I did. So he posted the post, and then in the comment section, or like
underneath,
on the story, said something about like you incited like mob something, and now you're playing the victim, and that was his
which
repost.
I wasn't playing the victim.
No.
But anyways, people got on my page, and it was like basically this just, I felt like somebody had taken a fire hose and just like sprayed it at full blast, and I just got like completely, I couldn't even open my mouth to take a breath.
Yeah.
And when I say descended upon me, I know that sounds dramatic, but it was like nothing I have ever experienced before in my life. And it wasn't, what's really funny is, ironically, it was all these people calling me a loser, speaking to me as a like my character, like saying like, I can't believe you do this. You know, there were comments about me being gay. There were comments about it being Pride Month and me, how dare I, or how fitting that I'm showing my true colors on Pride Month. Like, what does me being gay have to do with anything in this point? Like, very few people actually were standing up for Chase by making an argument that he was doing a good job. And maybe like I am completely just off point here with that being like a reasonable expectation. But that was my expectation. Like, if you actually think that like this is worth arguing for, like make an argument. But as much as I thought that and I believed that, and then Meredith, she was away for the weekend, and so I was kind of alone, which is fine. I can fight my own battles, even though I didn't want to fight this battle really in the end. But she kind of went on there and posted.
I said, I bet it's I said, let me guess. It's a bunch of white guys with beards. Because it was.
It actually was. There were some white women, but, and I don't want to like stereotype, but yeah, that incited a lot of garbage comments and just a lot of discussion that got really ugly in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Apparently Meredith is a racist.
Yeah, which is actually like a pretty common, like sometimes when you call out racism to white people, they love to flip that around and call you racist for calling out racism. Super common.
It just got really bad. And so at that point I was like, I gotta like back this up as much. Like it had already gone really badly sideways. And I thought, okay, maybe I looked at my actions and thought, what did I do that maybe wasn't appropriate here? And I had a discussion with one of my friends who agreed with me in a lot of ways, but he kind of said like, I don't know, like maybe it would have been better to kind of go about it in a bit more of like a more moderate approach. And the night before I was stuck in my ways and it didn't really sink in. And then I was thinking about it the next morning. I'm like, this is not what I want. Like, I don't want this to be this whole argument. Like, all I want is for overall the commentary and CrossFit and the athletes in it to be represented in a positive, respectful, professional manner. That's what I wanted. So I thought maybe taking such a targeted approach to one specific person was not a good idea. So I went on my phone again on my story and basically walked it back and said, I I want to clarify that I was not speaking to Chase's character. I think that's important. Don't know the guy. I was speaking to the job he was doing. I still don't think he's doing a good job. I do understand after talking to a few people on Instagram that this issue extends beyond one person, and maybe I didn't go about it in the same right way. What I want is for us all to just be pushing for fairness and representation and professionalism in the sport of CrossFit. Like, these athletes are busting their ass day in and day out to be on the floor, and I think that they deserve the best. And a lot of people were like, good for you. Like, I think it's really like big of you as a person to go on there and say that. And I was like, yeah, it's fine. I didn't do it to be just told I'm a big person. I really just really wanted to diffuse the situation.
Yeah.
It didn't diffuse the situation. That got a lot of DMs that was like, too late, you like effing idiot. Like, again, just pounding on me for being a horrible person, being a bad lawyer. Like, at that point I had removed anything tactic related off of my page because I didn't want my business that was completely separate to be attached to this and it to be thrown under the bus, because that was just the last thing I needed. I got really scared, and to be honest, I was really upset.
Yeah.
I just felt like I was between a rock and a hard place. Like, I had done this thing that really I don't think was honestly that bad, just maybe done with a little bit too much of a targeted approach. And it was just a lot. There were no actual points I could even speak to. Like, I just kept getting like comments after comments. And then by the time the afternoon came, I was just like, every comment that came on, I just deleted it. Like, I was scared to open my Instagram because it was just all of Savant's people. And again, no one even follows me. None of these people. A lot of them don't even have accounts. They were like fake accounts.
Yes.
Like, they didn't have followers. They didn't follow anybody, but they were on there like making comments. And it just, I had some of my people, like my followers, my friends, kind of like trying to kind of speak to some of these points.
There's no point though.
But like, it was just becoming so brutal. And then I was like, well, should I turn the comments off? And I'm like, I don't really want to turn the comments off because I think that there is freedom. Like, I don't want to use like freedom of speech, but I do think there were some good comments in here. And almost if somebody reads through this, they're going to see through it.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't about that. It was just about like defending Chase it wasn't even defending Chase. It was just beating me down, which they succeeded at. I was done with it. I wanted to be done. I know I did reach out at the end because I'm like, well, I didn't want to put this petition up for nothing, because a lot of people signed it and read it. So I sent it to some people that I know at CrossFit HQ to at least bring to light some of the issues that a majority of people were, or not a majority, a few of my followers at least were passionate about. And so maybe they can, try to improve the situation moving forward in the season. But it was honestly, it was really a horrible experience. And I wish, like, with absolutely nothing personal to gain there, I'm like, why did I even do that?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't about, standing up for my rights, being gay, or, something actually happening to me. It was just like, in the moment, I kind of was just like, fuck, this is so bad. Like, we got to get rid of this guy.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can look back and be like, like, weird hill to die on kind of thing. But when you're watching it, and I remember, we were watching it together, it is upsetting because you're thinking like, yeah, these athletes who are in the first wave or in, not the final heat, are they gonna be in the top 5? Are they gonna win? No, they're not. But they're still there to compete. They've still put a lot on the line to get there, and like, they still have family and friends watching. And when there's people who have set aside, time to try to keep up with their loved one or their friend who's competing, and you're hearing, instead of hearing actual good commentary, you're hearing about all of the things that they're doing wrong in the lift or in the event. Like, it's upsetting, and it's easy to, as an athlete, to put yourself in that situation and on the receiving end of that type of commentary, and it just feels kind of icky. And I think that's why you felt so strongly about it to begin with.
It was like everything just, it was like, it became like nails on a chalkboard. And I'm just going to point out one example. Mal O'Brien is an animal.
Yeah.
absolutely demolishing like almost every event. All the commentators really had to say was, wow, you know, she competes like Matt Fraser. She acts like Matt Fraser. She talks like Matt Fraser. Like, oh, this isn't new. This is like, we've heard it many times before. Like, you know, I like her. She's really good. She kind of, you know, she's kind of the up and coming Sam Briggs. It's like, no, she's the up and coming, whatever her name is. She's her own person. Like, why do we have to keep comparing new athletes to old athletes
who don't really compete anymore?
Like Mal O'Brien was really good before Matt Fraser. She's actually not that different than she was last year when she wasn't competing with Matt.
Yep.
Like,
well, like they do it to Emily Rolfe all the time. They compare her to Sam Briggs, and it's like Emily Rolfe is Emily Rolfe, and she's been good at this shit for like years.
Give her some credit. Like, stop taking it off. Like, whatever. That's my opinion. But
it is it is what makes it so hard as a newer athlete or a younger athlete or an athlete in this like a newer generation to get any attention or any sponsorship because literally people, they can't talk about the athlete without somehow, for some weird reason, drawing attention to people who are either completely out of the sport or phasing out, or, you know, who these new athletes are straight up beating on like a regular basis. Like Mal O'Brien would beat Matt Fraser in events. I guarantee you that. So like, how about Mal O'Brien is competing like Mal O'Brien. Mm-hmm. Mal O'Brien talks like Mal O'Brien. She walks around and she looks like Mal O'Brien. Like, she has her own brand. She is her own person. It's annoying.
Yeah. I just needed to point that out.
I think the best one was the men's snatch ladder at Granite Games on the team. Literally, like, one of the first guys out, he power snatches. First of all, Chase is like, you're going to see a lot of people miss this 185 bar. It's just like, it's the first one. You've been sitting in the corral. You know, you're just going to see people miss it. You want to know how many people miss the 185 bar? 0. Nobody missed it. He would probably miss it, so that's why.
Okay.
No, but I'm just saying, like,
yeah,
his perception.
But it's like, it's undermining the athlete's ability. So that's what it is.
The first guy comes out and power snatches 185 and then power snatches the next bar. And that sort of starts, well, you know, he really should be squatting it because at some point you're going to have to squat it. And, you know, it's going to cause him to miss. You don't want to have to like squat when you have to, not when you want to, or that kind of thing. And the dude cleared the ladder, almost the entire ladder with power snatch. And he's a little guy. And I'm just like, dude, shut up.
Yeah.
Like, there's a few ways to skin a cat here. If this guy feels good power snatching because that primes his CNS for like a heavy snatch and he's got, you know, strong legs and good mobility, probably going to be fine for him to do that. But it's just irritating. It's always like, oh, they should be doing this. They should be doing this. There's a lot of
should. He says the word should a lot. He should do this. They should be doing that. She should do this. These athletes should do that.
Oh, like, it's not a clean. You got to like, you can't chase it around. You got to make sure it's solid in the bottom. Like, bro, it is a max effort snatch. I guarantee you've been there where you're like, I don't have this lift. I can't sit in the bottom with it. I'm just going to have to stand up and try to save it. Like, that's just what happens.
Like, the male commentators are always like, oh yeah, the girls, like, you know, they're sitting, you know, we would never talk to each other, but the girls, they can be a little bit sassy.
No, that was Adrian Conway.
I know, but I'm like,
he
dude,
said catty.
No.
Well, you know, girls can be catty. I was like, what did you just say? Dude, did you just say that out loud?
I'm really like, are none of these people like groomed in any way, shape, or form at all ever? Like, can we ask for that? Like, the CrossFit Games are televised. Like, I actually had somebody who messaged me saying my wife knows nothing about CrossFit and she watched the Granite Games, and her question was, wow, like, why are they kind of talking like all these athletes suck?
Yeah.
And that kind of says it all.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so negative. It's like these athletes don't know what they're doing. They can't do what they're expected that they want to be able to do. Like, the workouts are really hard for them. Like, it really, really, really is just horrible. That's the last thing I'm going to say about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you have to give respect where respect is due. And at the end of the day, like none of those announcers, including Chase Ingram, could go out there and even tie the shoelaces of the person who finishes last.
But I guess okay.
It isn't. It's because those athletes, even though they're coming last place at regionals, still deserve respect for getting to that stage of competition. And respect at a bare minimum just means like don't shit talk them in the broadcast.
Yeah.
Like Sean Woodland does a great job when people, they miss reps or maybe the judge gives them a rep that they shouldn't. He can say like, oh, got away with one there. And that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't.
Great save. That wasn't, the most technical lift, but he did a good job saving. Like there's honesty and accuracy with color. Like you don't have to like be blowing smoke up people's asses, but it's like there's a line that was crossed and has been crossed many times before. And it's just, it's really, unsettling. I was going to say something. I can't remember.
Well, I think there's a bigger conversation to be had here too. And this is kind of where I think, Andrew Hiller and some of the more dissenting people on the internet, maybe Savon. I don't know. I don't keep up with Savon anymore, except, the other week. And I actually I DM'd the guy because I'm like, dude, what the hell, man? Because he posted some stuff about me, like DM, no response. DM, no response. Hey, are you going to respond to me? No response. The guy has no interest in having a conversation. His whole brand.
He doesn't want to have it offline because he has nothing to gain from that.
No.
He doesn't actually care. He's doing it for the likes, for the posts, for the follows, because he actually makes money off YouTube and his podcast. And what are those podcasts about? Being dissenting in CrossFit.
Yeah.
He brings up athletes and we've been on his podcast and it wasn't about CrossFit. It was just about whatever life. And I don't know, it was fine. It was a while back.
It was kind of early on before he had I guess developed his personal brand in the way that he's developed it today. But
it was before he was shadow banned.
Even then, I did that podcast and I was so on edge the whole time just because of who he is. And
some of the values that he was.
Yeah. And he said something, I remember specifically there was something that came up about transgendered people and he made some dumbass comment about, well, I think that boys have penises and girls have vaginas and it's that simple. And I didn't say anything. Neither one of us did. Mm-hmm. And I think back and I'm mad at myself that I didn't say anything almost. I was so taken aback by the comment. I didn't know what to say, but then I straight up didn't say anything. So I was mad at myself for a long time. And I don't know. I think I am more mad now at this system and this society that says we have to endure people like Savon, that we have to weather his bullshit.
It's not even people. It's honestly opinions and belief systems and values. If you have a differing opinion, you should say it. And there are different ways of saying it, but I still believe that I wish we spoke up as well.
Yeah. But
I don't know the guy. I just know what he stands for and I don't agree with it.
I think he actually used to be a decent person. I mean,
it's beside the point.
Yeah.
He's not a bad person. He's not a good person. It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters, and this is what I learned on a couple weekends ago on social media, is the world is full of people and everyone is going to have their own opinion about so many different things. What I realized is the people who follow me, my 42,000 people, probably not all of them, believe what I believe for the most part, or agree with most of what I put out.
Yeah.
They're okay with me being gay, or they accept me as a person. They agree that, you should eat carbs. They're or maybe they don't, and they just are interested in what I have to say.
They love gay shit.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
They're okay. They like Meredith, whatever I post. They're interested in my running, whatever. It was shocking to me that none of the people, it's so divided even under the surface.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
And it just takes one kind of nugget where you have an opinion that people are maybe passionate about to kind of open a can of worms and really see, you see the US and it's very divided. And you're seeing that on a macro level, but you're seeing that I saw it on an extremely micro level a few weekends ago. and just the I don't want to say bullying, just there was some harassment, I believe. I'm not playing the victim. I'm just stating my fact. And I think that's a lot of the U.S. That's why people just like are punching people in the face.
Well, I don't even think it's just the U.S. Like it's here too.
It is here.
Like we'll just call it the Western.
Worse in the U.S.
Yeah.
Much more divided.
Yeah, I think I think the internet just allows for it. Like you can easily like idealize what someone is about on the internet, what their opinions are, you know, whether you align with their worldview or not. And it allows for just, stereotyping and pigeonholing. And when in reality, like I think most people are more complicated and I guess just more complex than the way the internet would have you believe that they are. I think that there are some real assholes out there and like bigots and just terrible people.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's known.
Yeah. I think the internet it really like allows you to paint people in a very binary way and only at like the extreme ends of opinion. And so
I think it's because the binary people are the ones that are outspoken.
Yeah.
On both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, but the reality is that in the middle, there's this massive silent majority, and they would just rather not get involved.
Yeah, they if they see something they don't like, then they just move on.
They're like, you know, and the other side of it is, like confrontation or like escalation has no negative consequences online. Like you can go on someone's profile and say terrible shit because you can do that without risking either like getting the shit kicked out of you or, you know, maybe you do that in a literal, like a public social setting and people are like, hey dude, that's not okay. Like there are actual social consequences to acting like that in public, but behind a keyboard, especially behind a keyboard from a fake account, what's the consequence? Like what's the worst that happens? You get blocked? That's literally the worst thing that can happen. Or something like someone says something negative back to you. I think that people you can say whatever you want. And like like in the comfort of your basement, behind your laptop or on your cell phone, like what's the worst that's going to happen? So I think you see a lot of that, especially when it becomes name calling, which obviously, like, do you think like those people would actually walk up to your face and be like, hey, Alex Parker, you're a loser. I think you're a fucking idiot. Like,
I don't know, maybe
some of them maybe, but the difference is like, what if they did?
Yeah. Like there's a thing is like, if anyone's around, they'd be like, dude, what the hell? But like on the internet, you're able to kind of like, you have this backing of people who are with you on a certain post and they're like liking your comments and whatever. And it's like, it's funny because after the fact, some of my followers were like, you know, you shouldn't let this deter you from standing up for what you think. And I was like, that's fair. At the same time, like, again, this is just not the hill I want to die on. Like Chase Ingram making a few insensitive and like sexist and inappropriate comments about some of my friends and the athletes that I think deserve more respect it's not worth it. It's really not.
No, and at the end,
to me, like, it's not. I have better things to do. Had I known how this was going to materialize, like I could have just easily enough had written my own letter to HQ and said, I think this is a problem.
Yeah.
Here are the examples. Here's what you're doing well, and had, enjoyed my weekend instead of like having a weekend where I cried
a lot.
I did cry because it's hard, and I'm okay now, and I see what happened. But in the moment, it was hard.
Yeah.
As like, even though logically I knew what was going on, it's really hard to just have your character just shit on.
I know.
When you don't feel like you did that much that was that warranted that.
Yes.
It's funny because like I feel like people are, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to talk about more of what I could have done different. There was a lesson learned and that's that.
The end. No, but I think it's yeah. I'm sorry I wasn't here to be more helpful.
It's okay.
I think it's a lot to expect. Like you do have a lot of support and a lot of followers, but when it's something is so target, like when it comes from a person who's really negative and they paint you in a negative light and they basically all but say like, "Hey, followers, go get her."
Yeah.
Like there's only so much that your followers and your supporters can do at that point, because like essentially that incites a little bit of a riot, and
That's what it felt like.
it gets, instead of like, I mean, Savan or anyone for that matter, like he can't be too targeted because he's going to then get flagged for bullying. And I'm convinced that's why he doesn't tag people in his stories. That's why he didn't tag me.
He doesn't want to get his other account shadow banned.
That's why I didn't tag you. Like it's so I can't be like, "Hey asshole, this is bullying, report it." Instagram's like minus 10 points from, whatever their system is. But anyways,
I will say, I'll point out two things. The first is that, and I know that this extends way beyond like my bigger, more dramatic experience, and that is how harder hitting a negative comment is on your self-esteem or your security or your feelings. Like a negative, like "you're stupid," and this might be just me. I don't think it is, because I've talked to many people who are insecure about just posting on Instagram, regardless of who they are. A negative comment like "you're stupid," or, go wave your pride flag and F off, whatever. That comment trumps 10 comments saying like, "Thank you. Like, so glad you spoke up. Really vulnerable." Like whatever positive like affirmations that you're getting. I like that "you're a loser" actually, and it might be sad of me to admit this, but that hurts.
Well, yeah. And there's probably an evolutionary prerogative to that. Like shame, that means a lot.
Like you do feel bad. And like, it did make me think like, maybe I, shouldn't have, and maybe I shouldn't have, but like, I don't, "you're a loser," or like, talking about the fact that I'm gay, like really, that has not happened in a long time. And that bothered me.
Yeah.
Like I had some of my fellow competitors were like, I just asked that guy to remove that comment, because some of them were getting really bad. Like really just, and not even like, just talking about groups of people.
Yeah.
Like, and it sucks that a negative comment from somebody who probably just types it and then goes about their day.
Yeah.
Actually has that much more of an impact than like 10 positive comments.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know how many were positive and how many were negative across like all my DMs and all of the posts or comments on my post. I don't think that the negative ones outweighed, but they sure did in my mind.
Yeah.
They sure did.
Yep.
I think back to those days, and all I can think of, all I remember are the negative ones.
Yeah.
And I think that extends beyond like controversial topics. I think, you can put some post up about, you in a bikini, and if you're an athletic woman, you could get 100 comments saying like, "Holy, wow, you look so beautiful. Like, wow, great body," or you work really hard," or like "strong woman," whatever, like that are meant to be positive. You get one like, "Wow, you look like a dude," or "you take steroids." Like that one is going to be the one that sticks.
Yeah. That's when you remember. Or
no one cares about like, your food.
Yeah.
Even though over time you have a lot of people asking about your recipes or whatever, you get one person be like, "Stop posting your food. It's gross." That sticks.
Yeah.
At least with me. And I think it does with others, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
I was going to say something else, but I just got so passionate about that one that it will come back to me.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to shift into the like mental health aspect of sort of like the commentary, but also these people online, to revisit Andrew Hiller. And like this also goes to the commentary.
Sorry, can I interrupt?
Okay.
I will say, and I think this is a little bit why I have like a personal connection. When I've watched my regionals and my games videos back, because I think we all do. Not like I don't watch it over and over, but I've seen my events, and many times I have heard these men, it's always men, because I mean, that's all they have is commentators or men, making negative comments about me. oh, she's not going to be able to keep that pace up. Oh, she shouldn't be beating Sam Briggs.
Yeah.
Like, really? I mean, I had an event in 2018 that I ended up winning. And the entire time it was
Bill Grundler
talking about how, like, my running technique isn't good. I'm running too fast. I'm not going to be able to keep that up.
She's looking too stiff. She's laboring. She's going to fall apart. She's going to explode. She's going to lose it.
Like, I won that event, and I'm watching that back being like, really?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm sensitive, but
I don't
whatever.
think it's not good commentary. And if they'd known, that's the thing. If they do any amount of research, they probably go, huh, you know what? Alex is a really good runner. Like, she's probably, like, she could do really well here. Like, we'll keep an eye on her. Like, yeah, she's leading. We expect her to be leading. Like, we'll see if she holds on to this. Like, what is so difficult about just, like, being fucking positive? Like, it is not that hard.
I know. Anyways, I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to point that out because it came to me earlier. But
okay,
you're talking about mental health.
Yeah, I mean, that goes right to it. And I think that what we have to be sensitive to, or we need to be sensitive to in this sport, is the mental health issues that are coming to light with athletes. And we see this a lot in collegiate athletes, successful athletes, athletes who have a lot of potential, but they also have a lot of pressure put on them, maybe by themselves, by coaches, by their parents. Just, they feel a lot of pressure to perform. And I think it would be foolish for us to believe that same type of pressure and these same mental health issues do not exist in CrossFit, because I think they do. And I think that there's potentially, an even bigger mental health crisis sort of bubbling under the surface. And when we have to be careful with the way that we talk about athletes in commentary, and then, in the media. So a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, after one of the European semifinals, I was invited onto a panel, including Chase Ingram, to discuss whether Sarah Sigmundsdottir was past her peak. And I got the email, hey, do you want to be on this little podcast? This is the topic. And my gut reaction was like, no, I don't really want to, I don't want to be a part of that conversation. I don't think it's a fair conversation. And then I thought more about it, and I was thinking, like, well, shit, this conversation is going to happen whether I'm on the panel or not. It's just going to be somebody else. So I thought, I am going to say yes to this, and I am going to do my best to prevent the conversation from just going down the toilet. And I think one of the first things I said in the conversation was, like, it's really important that we don't talk about athletes peaking or being past their peak or their performance in a pejorative way, meaning, like, we're not casting negativity, we're not casting doubt. There's still people with feelings. And I think that's really important. And when I look at the way that Andrew Hiller is going, again, like, I think fundamentally when he started doing videos in the open, I was like, yes, this is a good thing, or it can be a good thing. It's potentially gonna draw attention to some blind spots and maybe help or encourage some, like, better online judging. I don't know. It was very much like, hey, CrossFit, hey, you guys in charge of the judges, you guys watching the videos, like, let's watch a little closer. Let's consider what we're looking at here. But it was always, like, not on the athlete. And I think he said this a few times. It's not the athlete's fault for taking advantage of bad judging and doing reps that they think are good. It's the judge, and it's the people in charge of reviewing videos. So I can agree with that. But then you saw this shift start to occur in semifinals, and people on the internet, and probably just in general, I'm not going to say on the internet, what is reinforced is repeated. And so when you're constantly reinforced, like, people love the idea of calling athletes out, love the idea of shaming people for bad reps, love that. Let's do that. And now you're playing kind of a bad game of telephone. Like, you started way over here focusing on CrossFit, and now you're like way over here, getting people to comment a bunch of bats in people's Instagram comment sections and focusing more specifically on the athlete and their perception of their own reps.
Well, that happened to me with Chase.
I know.
Like that's kind of the way the internet is. Like people love like outspoken opinions that agree with their own opinions, and they will reinforce that person.
Yeah.
I think that's why it ended up going to where it went with me, because I was like, oh, I got to do this.
Yeah.
Just like Andrew Hiller was probably like, holy shit, like I'm doing this for the people.
Yeah, I know.
And then you realize like, but then if you don't catch yourself, it's like, then it becomes where it is becoming, in our opinion.
Yeah. And I think that now we're missing the mark a little bit. We're not standing up for the athletes in the face of CrossFit. It's like, let's go tear down the athletes who continue to take advantage of the system, whether or not they realize they're taking advantage of the system or not. And there's a line there. And I think as soon as you step over the line and you begin attacking the athlete.
Well, that's why a lot of athletes have blocked.
Yeah.
A lot of those accounts like Hiller.
Yes.
Because they don't want their videos being pulled. It's just the reason why I've blocked all of them too, because at least I blocked them on that day, because the last thing you want is just like more of your videos being pulled into their accounts with their following and being told like, go attack this person.
Yeah. So I am sort of sad to see him step over that line, because I think we were on a good path, and now we're on like, kind of an icky path. Like maybe he steps back over to the let's focus on CrossFit path. But honestly, I think he started running in Savon's circle, and so obviously like no huge surprise that that's going on. But I think that there's not enough concern for athletes' mental health. And again, when you compare a CrossFit athlete to a collegiate athlete or to a professional athlete who's maybe carded, with the Olympic team, or who is on a professional team of some sort, like presumably those athletes have access to counselors and sports psychologists and more resources. Like whether or not they feel empowered to take advantage of those resources, I don't know. But there is no governing body for CrossFit athletes. There's no organization. There's no oversight. There's nothing that really serves as a barrier or a protection or offers resources to these athletes. And so it falls to the athletes then to seek out their own help when they need it. And sometimes that's really hard to do if you don't know how to do it. And I worry that that's not being done, because there's stigma around mental health issues. There's stigma around asking for help. It's another thing for the athlete to do, on top of like a long list. I mean, CrossFit athletes are training around the clock. And one thing that I think is sort of important to point out, which is kind of, I was having a conversation with one of my clients who's a high-level athlete yesterday, and she was saying, I feel like she's training for the games right now, and she's like, I feel so emotional. I feel so like I'm at the end of my rope sometimes, and like the smallest thing will set me off. And I've experienced that.
I have too.
You have experienced it. It's when you're so stressed out from training. And I don't mean like, oh, I'm so stressed out. I just mean like you have one stress cup and you're filling that up with training, because you're training 4 to 6 hours.
You're literally beating yourself to a pulp every day.
Yeah.
And it's mentally taxing, because like you've got this event coming up.
So literally like having someone change your work schedule or having your schedule change or just something like that, like, is enough to just set you off, like just start crying. And I don't think people realize that. I don't think people realize that is like, there's a toll to training, especially as an athlete who doesn't have a manager, who doesn't have a coach, who doesn't have a partner who can do every single thing for them. Like you are at your wit's end. And imagine that as an athlete who's in that situation, you have to worry about people like Andrew Hiller, or you have to worry about, Savon, or just like anybody on the internet, like for whatever reason, coming onto your page with a bunch of bats. Really? So it's like, I don't think that we're being.
Can you explain the bat thing?
Well, so he thinks he's like the Batman of cross. He's like, he does a lot of like Batman jokes in his videos.
Okay.
So, and he like has a shirt with like the Batman symbol, and so that's the sign. That's people go in there and they comment bats
on his posts or on other people's
on
posts?
other people's posts. Okay, basically to call attention to and even unrelated posts. Like he's posted a few times about Katrin, and you'll just go on any of Katrin's posts now, and it's just like bats.
Really?
I'm like, people need to get a life.
I think CrossFit athletes more so, and this is a guess, probably are under a little bit more pressure, especially the ones maybe not quite at the top yet, those bubble athletes who aren't making that much money in the sport. And so and we've talked about this before, a lot of their income comes from their Instagram following and them being ambassadors or influencers.
Yeah.
And so it's tricky, they're under a lot of pressure to make sure they're posting the right things. They're not, losing followers. They're appealing to most people. It's tricky. And it's like, we've had athletes in our sphere, things will come up like the whole push, I guess almost 2 years ago with Black Lives Matter and the Greg Glassman situation, specifically with CrossFit. And a lot of these like high level athletes were like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Like, obviously I have a belief here, but I don't want to lose half my followers or however many followers maybe will disagree with what I post.
Yeah.
And that is a genuine concern. And it's so they're basically a business. Like, you're running a business, but it's also yourself. Like, it's very conflicting. And I think that alone can cause some like mental angst.
When you don't feel empowered to have opinions or have strong opinions or, state what is important to you.
Because it might impact your bottom line.
Yeah. And I think CrossFit specifically has a history and a pattern of not being too friendly with people who disagree or dissent. I mean, long history of that. And so I think there's this culture of fear a little bit of, stepping out of line, of speaking up. I mean, like a lot of people joke about CrossFit being a cult, but like, damn, if they don't do some culty shit, like as soon as you step out of line, it's like you're gone. And I think people,
it's actually still a very, very small community.
It is. Yeah. And, it can feel very, I don't know the word, but I mean, I've been there where, your value, your money, you feel like your success is tied to, playing the game, saying the right things, don't step out of line, don't be too political, be funny, but not too funny, show some skin, not too much skin.
Yeah.
But it's like, you laugh, but that is what it is like or has been like.
We'll post about, okay, well, for example, the most recent school shooting, you post about that and I get comments that are like, wow, like it's nice to see, an athlete actually speaking up about this stuff, because you don't see that in CrossFit. You don't, because it's a gun, it comes down to like politics and gun control and that will piss people off, even though it might not even be about that. But anyway,
I mean, what should piss people off is children getting murdered.
Exactly.
But
anyways, sometimes I just want to be like, I'm not an athlete anymore.
It doesn't matter.
My income is not tied to me like having followers.
Yeah, but I think,
or agreeing with people on the internet or being politically like neutral. If that's like even a thing.
But it creates this, like, you look at every other sport. And I'm not saying every athlete in every other sport, but like the big athletes, Megan Rapinoe, LeBron, Sue Bird, Alex Morgan, like US women's national team, when like they speak up about things, like they post about things, they say like, hey guys, not cool. And it feels good to have the people that you look up to like be some reflection of your worldview or your values. And it's not like I mean, there are some, I guess, athletes who have worldviews that I don't share, and they wouldn't be people that I would follow. But it feels a little like, when you see nothing said, especially something as major as what happened in Texas. And, that's just one example. When it's like everyone just goes on their days as normal, and they're posting their workout videos and what they're having for lunch, and I'm hitting a pool session, and tagging their nutrition coach or whatever. Like it's like really, like, we're not going to pause for even a second to be like, hey, this terrible thing happened and I don't have all the answers, but I know that it is a terrible thing that happened. Like we can't do that just be a human being for a second. But that is CrossFit right there. And it's like, I'm so tired of it. And that's the thing. And the reason why I probably don't have a lot of followers is I post a lot of, I guess, for lack of a better word, political shit.
You're not even that political, but yeah.
It's like, just
at the same time, like, I think if you want to talk about like followers, I think if you do post actual values, you do put yourself out there, you might lose followers, but the followers that you do have or that you do get are going to be ones that are actually like very much in line and very, I'm going to say loyal. That's not necessarily the word, but that's why Savon's followers will attack whoever he says to attack.
Yeah, because they're super
because
loyal.
He's extreme, and that's who he has, and that's fine. Like, we probably have more like people who are LGBTQ and like that sort of thing, because you put that out there. It kind of goes back to like, I have a completely different group of followers than Savon.
Yeah.
But I think for some reason, like, CrossFitters are still unsure about I don't want to say picking a side, because I just want to get away from that like divisionist thinking, but that's kind of the case.
Yeah.
It's like, I think there are two, again, to go use my example, there are two sides in this sport. There are like like, they gave a gun to the winner at the 2015 games. Like, there's a lot of people who are like military and police, and I think, Greg Glassman did have a lot of very strong opinions, and that was became very clear, and then that became not okay. But I think a lot of some of the other values kind of are still stuck in the sport, and at least were in the sport for a very long period of time. And so, like, moving out, like, yeah, you can go to CrossFit, and there's like, they do Pride Month at CrossFit gyms and all that. And I think generally there is a little bit more like people who are moderate and like gym owners that are moderate. But I think in this sport, it can be very divisive. Like, yeah. And this could just be my perspective here, but I think that's the case. It's not, you're not in soccer, and it's also a small community. There's not that many people in the pool.
Yeah, I mean, but you just said it. Like, I think the thing that is both probably the reason why CrossFit has had so much success, but also right now I believe the thing that is holding it back is that it was born from the community. Mm-hmm. And it's like we're to a point now where we're trying to grow and evolve and be better and bigger and more progressive. But, like, frankly, a big part of the community does hold rather extreme viewpoints. And I think part of the reason why Savon and people like him have a big following, and there are all these people who, they want things to go back to the old ways, and they like that, is because I think it represents, or at least like, Greg, I think it's kind of the Trump thing where there are just people out there who want to know that you can be an asshole and not only get rewarded for it, but achieve like a lot of success being that way. And to basically be ousted because you're an asshole, like, get out of your own company. That's how bad you are. That pisses people off, because they're like, they now, some part of them no longer feels validated.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little complicated, but
yeah. Anyways, that's probably a topic for another time or maybe never.
Yeah. I think just, I want to end by saying like, overall, it was a pretty, I want to say bad weekend, but I think lessons were learned.
Yeah.
And I did want to get on here and hopefully kind of explain what happened in not too of a biased way, more of what happened and what I learned. And I mean, obviously I'm biased because I'm my own person, but I think the internet can be really great, but it really can be dark. And a lot of people told me like, so what? It's also just the internet.
Yeah. Someone said when you become the target, you know that you've hit the target.
Yeah.
Which is pretty.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if that's like a good thing.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say about it is it's not exclusive to situations like this. I just find people are like hyper aggressive on the internet. Even when they come on, like somebody will come on to a tactic post and instead of saying like, oh, well, I kind of, I read this, or can you explain, this through this lens, or do you have more information? It's always like, so like, why are you yelling at us? Like,
Yeah.
why not just come on here and ask a question?
Yeah. It's like, well, I read this. And so I find it really interesting that you didn't think it was important to include it in your post.
And
it's like or like, you don't put caption on one post and it's like, I can't hear this. Can you please put captions? Like, well, we do it on every single other post. It's like, you can't win.
No.
You just can't.
Yeah.
There's just too many people to please.
It's impossible to please them all.
Overall, I mean, we obviously benefit from it, and I'm really grateful for like having a space. I noticed I took a few days off of Instagram after that just to kind of like decompress. And I noticed I do spend a lot of time on Instagram, and I probably do waste a fair amount. I'm a little bit more conscious of that now. But at the same time, I did notice that without it for a couple of days, I felt a little bit disconnected. And disconnected, like, not in a good way. Like, I have a lot of, I felt disconnected from my community. And that might be sad to say because I do see people face to face. I have lots of friends here and I have activities. But I do rely on Instagram quite a bit for my social life.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do. I think that's just the nature of it. So I do think it's a great way to provide like connection and connect with people on things that you agree with and value. But it can really turn on a dime.
In a hurry.
Yeah. But also there are like different things you can do. I noticed on your account. You can like block people who don't follow you.
Yes, you can
like
prevent
block
them from
new follows, like all these things that in the moment, I guess maybe had I known.
Yeah, I mean, cyberbullying is really becoming a thing. And so I think Instagram and a lot of platforms are stepping up, and there are ways to protect yourself from it. And that's a really good thing to take advantage of, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
Or just don't put stuff out that might lead you to getting bullied, although that's hard to do if you have strong opinions. But
yeah.
Thanks for listening. Holy moly. I felt like I talked a lot.
Well, a lot to say. So thanks for saying it. Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, share, do all the stuff, and we'll catch you guys again super soon.